Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a truly fascinating text from the Demetrian codexes. We are unpacking this incredible historical and linguistic premise, the idea that a single shift in translation didn't just change the words in a book. No, it completely rewired human history. We're talking about rewriting our legal and spiritual standing from the absolute ground up. We're exploring how language literally dictates jurisdiction.
Now think about this for a second. What if a single translated word didn't just change a book, but legally changed an entire bloodline? I mean, it sounds like the plot of a mystery thriller, right? But according to the source material we're exploring today, this isn't fiction. It's a real historical exploration of how the translation of ancient texts quietly moved humanity out of a state of natural freedom and trapped us in a highly structured, heavily burdened legal system.
Part 1. The Wolf and the Word. Relearning Ancient Slaw.
To really understand this, the text takes us all the way back to the original native tongue of the Messiah, which was Aramaic. And the source actually notes something super interesting. The Messiah deliberately avoided ministering in Hebrew, viewing it as a language that was already captured by the religious gatekeepers of the state. So Aramaic was used to bypass that traditional religiosity. This was a massive shift away from outward performative religion, moving towards something incredibly organic and instinctual. The text uses this powerful, almost cinematic imagery to describe the ancient Aramaic concept of prayer known as slaw. Slaw wasn't about reciting traditions out loud. No, slaw is described here as setting a trap. It's a process of capturing the divine thoughts of God. Just listen to how the text paints this picture. As a wolf preys into the night, he haunches lowly, listening intently, roaming slowly, cautiously attuned. It's tense, isn't it? It's primal. It's deeply connected to the natural world. It's all about listening and aligning, not just speaking. And out of that intense, instinctual focus comes this raw, vocative cry, a howl in the moonlight, mine own Abba. The source text really emphasizes that in the Semitic mind, this cry of Abba is fundamentally different from our modern, kind of sentimental ideas of the word. It's a profound recognition of a shared life force. It quite literally means my life for light, my strength in yours. It represents a relationship of absolute organic unity, where the child and the source are made of the exact same substance.
Part 2. The Great Juridical Shift, from Soil to Marble.
Okay, let's dive into this timeline. Because here is where the narrative shifts from the warm, open soil of that natural connection straight into the cold, marble halls of institutional law. The central conflict of our explainer today is what happened when that wild, organic Aramaic concept met the highly structured, bureaucratic machinery of the Greco-Roman world. The translation journey went from the Aramaic Abba to the Greek Pater, and ultimately into the Western Father. And the source stresses that, in the architectural framework of these texts, a translation is never just swapping syllables. No, it is a quiet, deliberate shift into a completely new legal jurisdiction. By changing just that one word, the religious gatekeepers were essentially slipping the chains of debt right back onto the wrists of the people.
You see, when Abba became Pater, it fell under the dark shadow of Roman jurisprudence, specifically a severe legal concept called patria potestas. Under this Roman law, a father was the pater familias. That means he held absolute, unilateral legal power over his household. He didn't just guide his children. Legally speaking, he owned them. The text points out that a Roman father had the absolute legal right to sell his children into slavery or even sentence them to death. The child was treated purely as property, a cold legal status known as alieni juris.
Part 3. Seed versus property. Two opposing kingdoms.
This brings us to two entirely opposing worldviews, really two distinct kingdoms of thought. On one side, you have the Aramaic concept of the living seed, and on the other, the Greco-Roman concept of property. And this isn't just some academic theological difference. According to the text, it is a complete restructuring of how a person actually relates to their source of life. On the left, we see the Aramaic reality of Abba. In this reality, you don't negotiate for your inheritance because it is already woven into your bones. It's organic unity. But then look on the right, the Romanized pater. By shifting the language, the creator was completely refrained by religious gatekeepers, no longer a loving, organic source, but a severe, contract-holding magistrate demanding performance. Under this Romanized translation, love is conditional. It has to be constantly managed and earned through strict legal compliance.
Part 4. The frequencies of standing. Two ledgers of law.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the ancient scriptures themselves seem to anticipate this exact trap. The text argues that this shift in language created two entirely different ledgers of law, two different frequencies of standing, if you will. Notice how in two primary legal decrees of liberation from the Bible, Galatians 4:6 and Romans 8:15, the original Aramaic Abba is preserved right side by side with the Greek pater. It literally says Abba Father. Why use both? Well, the source argues it's a bilingual legal deed. It was intentionally written this way as a declaration of absolute decoupling. It completely releases the individual from both the natural lineage system of the Aramaic world and the strict courtroom liability of the Greek and Roman world.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding the difference between what the text calls the 9.15 frequency and the 15.9 trap. Over on the left, the 9.15 standing is that sovereign cry of Abba. When you operate from here, you're a natural heir who is legally free. You owe the court literally nothing because your father owns the court. But on the right, the 15.9 trap happens when you strip away Abba and you're left with only the institutional, demanded father. Suddenly, you are dragged right back into a debt ledger. You become a slave frantically trying to please a master, constantly terrified of making a mistake.
Part 5. The Muddy Pit, the living face of the watch. To truly grasp the weight of these two legal realities, the source material offers us a profound, highly visceral analogy. It asks us to stop looking at the cold gears of the court and instead look at the living face of the watch through this deeply emotional scenario. Just imagine a young child who has fallen deep into a muddy pit. Let's walk through this step by step. First, the fall happens. The child looks up. Now, if that child sees a Roman magistrate standing at the edge, their immediate reaction is pure terror. The child knows they've ruined their clothes, they broke the rules, and they are going to face the heavy hand of judgment. They have to plead, bargain, and promise to be absolutely perfect just to be pulled out. That right there, that is the 15.9 corrupted ledger of institutional religiosity in action.
But this brilliantly illustrates the alternative, the 9.15 reality. If that exact same child looks up from the mud and sees their Abba, everything changes in an instant. The child doesn't calculate the cost of the mistake. They don't worry about the mud on their clothes. They simply stretch out their arms and let out a raw, unpolished cry. Because that child knows, with absolute certainty, that the one looking down is going to jump straight into the mud to pull them out. The child is perfectly secure, not because of some legal performance, but because the blood in their veins perfectly matches the blood of the one reaching down. Zero negotiation required. Which brings us full circle. The text concludes with this incredibly powerful thought. By restoring the Aramaic breath of Abba, we step out of the courtroom of human religion and walk back into the open, moonlit wilderness of the Father's house. It's a return to that primal, organic connection we discussed at the very beginning. Remember the wolf in the wilderness? It's about being completely sovereign, completely debt-free, and forever secure from the rigid ledgers of institutional control.
It's an absolutely fascinating look at how linguistics and history intertwine to shape human thought and structure. So based on the text we've explored in this explainer today, I want to leave you with a final thought to consider. When you look at your own life, are you standing in the courtroom of human religion bound by a ledger of debts? Or are you standing out there in the open wilderness of the Father's house? Keep questioning the words that shape your world, and I'll see you in the next explainer.